So you say you've got insurance. What is the deductible on replacing a roof like this?
Well, at this time, the insurance personnel are meeting, and I think we need to defer on that item because that is all being determined as we speak with the people who we have our coverage with.
And any idea what it will cost for repair? You've obviously got this motion for $1.5 million to modify your capital improvement. Is that specifically for the roof?
Specifically needed for what we're going to need quickly, but I'm going to turn to Bill and
the 1.5 is placeholder. We don't know, but we're incurring expenses as we go. We're anticipating, of course, that our coverage is going to reimburse us for those. The 1.5 is not tied to the specific cost of the repairs, since, as Mr. Mackey said earlier, the total scope of that work has not been determined. We're hopeful to have that by, if not the end of the day, the end of the day tomorrow.
So, Bill, the total cost of repairing the roof may well cost substantially more than $1.5 million.
Steve Mackey.
Kevin, the answer is yes. We haven't gotten a total scope of what's going to need to be done yet because we haven't gotten the building to a safe condition yet.
When last night when we talked about that fourth panel rupturing, could more happen?
Steve.
The answer is yes. It's an unsafe situation out there, and that's why we pulled all our crews off of there, and we're in a kind of a planning mode today to try make our best determination of the safest way of dealing with the heavily loaded panels that we have out there right now.
So there's no work going on right now, is that right?
The only work that is occurring today is basically some engineering staff doing a review of the roof, and but in conjunction we do need to, they'll be using the crane on the west side of the building and the man basket to get a visual observation of the roof from that location, but otherwise that's about it for today.
And do you need to clear the snow and ice off the roof before you can send people back to work? Is that?
We will need to clear those panels that are heavily loaded at this point, the ones that we suspect that could potentially rupture.
How many pieces is that dome comprised of? You mentioned there's some triangles, some diamonds. How many pieces are we talking about?
There are 106 total pieces, of which there are rectangular panels, triangular panels, and what we call the diamond panels.
Okay, and you've lost 4 of them. Can you throw a percentage? Does this make up 5% of the roof, 10% of the roof?
I would only speculate in terms of what that percentage is, but it's 4 of 106 right now.
Bill, you said something during the meeting that it is tested every year in and year out, but the Metrodome roof is tested. How do you test it?
As recently as last July, and Steve will finish the technical aspects, as recently as last July we take a swatch of it's Teflon coated fiberglass. It's 1/32 of an inch thick. We take a swatch of that. It goes back to Bird Air and it's laboratory tested to see its strength, any UV deterioration that has occurred over the years, over the last 30 years. And the report that came back in July was it still exceeds the original specifications that was purchased under. There has been a question about its expected useful life, and when we purchased that, it was expected a minimum of 20 years, and of course we're past the 20 years, but the testing shows that it meets every standard. Did I say anything?
No, that's correct. Bill has got that pretty well covered. It is the test results show that the fabric, while it has, there's been some degradation over time, it still exceeds the original specifications.
Can someone comment on what sort of you described a little bit the logistics of when you've got a storm coming this way, you make preparations to make sure that it sounds like the snow melts and that it goes off the roof. Can you kind of tell me again what
Steve.
Well, the first thing that we do, and this process has kind of evolved over time and as kind of our best practices, is we turn up the heat within the bowl and we heat the mass of the building because we want to get all the concrete and seat and all the structure as warm as we can. When we get to the point where the snow starts to fall and actually come to land on the roof, then we redirect the air, the hot air, between the 2 layers of fabric. We have the outer membrane, which is the structural member, and you have the inner liner, which is a acoustical membrane. So we direct that hot air between the two layers of fabric, and that's what we use. That hot air is then melting the snow off the roof. The reason why we heat the bowl prior to that is we don't want to have any radiation loss. The heat going back to the bowl to heat that up when it's, if it was cold, so we're radiating heat out versus in and out.
Into what temperature?
Our fans are limited to 150 degrees, so we're putting as hot as air as we can up there.
So the ambient bowl, what would it feel like if you were down there?
In the bowl, we would be 90 to 95.
Steve, how many
No,
workers?
excuse me one second. Also in the water, the high power.
And then if we get to a point where we're not able to adequately melt the snow off the roof, then what we do is we put our personnel up. We use the fire hoses, and we have a cold water system which we then inject steam into, and we create hot water to wash the snow off the panels.
Steve, how many workers, if any, I maybe missed this, were on the roof when this fourth panel failed, and how many were on the floor when the panel failed?
There was nobody on the roof when the fourth panel failed last night. On the floor itself, I believe we had, and I don't know the exact number, but probably about 13 people.
Steve, you mentioned that you mentioned on Saturday that you knew you guys might be in trouble. So did you know that this might happen? That it could happen?
Well, you always have in the back of your mind that it could happen. Of course, we're there to try to prevent it from happening. But we got to a position on late Saturday afternoon. The snow was still accumulating. The winds were very strong. And it was my determination that we had to evacuate our personnel off the roof. And our hope was that we could come back on Sunday morning with the winds down and continue the snow removal process, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that.
So on Saturday there were people, before any panels failed, there were people up there trying to get snow off?
Yes, that's correct.
Steve, the yellow, I noticed some yellow supports. Are those specifically the panels that you're concerned about failing?
The straps.
Yeah, we've added some yellow banding and to the underside of some of the panels, and those would be some of the panels that the Bird Air has identified as having concerns from their perspective. Now, there may be other panels that we're going to have to do that to, but yes, that is correct.
And that's to provide additional support?
It's to provide some additional support.
How many panels do you think are still at risk potentially?
I don't know with certainty right now. We know there's several panels. Part of our planning exercise today is to determine with our best estimates and guesses what panels we think are compromised or could potentially rupture, so we can have a safety plan
And
to
what
work
will
on.
you do to get snow off of those? What's the process for that?
We have not made a complete determination of that, and that will come out of our hopefully our planning session today.
Given that this roof has actually passed its useful life, have you, over the past years, maybe leading up to that time frame, ever gotten a budget to replace the entire roof from Bird Air?
First of all, it's not past its useful life.
Well, yes.
That's an incorrect term. It's well within its useful life, subject to the testing that we've done on an ongoing basis. We did get a quote. I don't know how old the quote is. Of
$15 million.
$15 million for the total replacement of the fabric roof.
When
I
was
should
that?
also emphasize that the systems, the building systems, the structure, insofar as we know, and we've done the analysis of that, the structural engineers have, all the other systems are functioning as they have and could last into the future. But the one system was the fabric roof. The cables that hold the fabric roof in place, as everybody knows, I think that it's air supported. That's what keeps the Teflon up. The cables keep it from flying away. The cable system is also functioning in an optimum manner.
Was that quote recently, or was that just something you got over
The what?
the quote, the $15 million roof replacement? Was that gotten
Steve,
this
when
year or
is it?
years ago?
We received the price from Mortensen within the last year, and I'm not sure what the reason was for it, but it was just mostly for information purposes.
From Mortensen?
Yes.
So, Bill, what's your best determination right now as to when this job may be completed?
I don't have one. Proceed with all prudent haste, but we will, of course, subject to the opinion of the experts on our team, We'll devise that schedule and stay close contact with our users and announce that. It won't be without until we have the certification that it's absolutely safe, that people can return here with confidence and attend those games and events.
And who needs to provide that certification?
Steve.
The certification will be provided by Geiger Engineers. They were the original designer of the roof, and so they will provide that certification.
Any idea how much revenue will be lost in the process between 2 football games, all the other events you've got scheduled?
We're in the process of determining that, but at this time we don't have that number.
When do you think you might have an idea of the totality of the repairs and how long it's going to take? Are we a week away from it? Are we?
We do not know yet until we get to a point where we have this building into a safe condition, and so it is unknown, because I'm not sure how long it will take to remediate the issues.
It looks like you're melting some snow out there. Will further storms perhaps impact this process? Is that one of the things you're watching?
Steve.
We are melting. We're trying to melt snow on the roof. We're putting heat within the bowl because it's desirable to melt the snow that we've got out there. Further snowstorms could impact this process, but again, we don't know how much, when, at what point, and so it's hard to say exactly what impact that will have.
I just want to point out, it's 10:30. I know that the guys from the NFL and the Vikings do need to get going, so I want to point out.
Here?
They're out in the concourse, just so.
They wanted to do it out in the concourse. Sorry.
It's all set up, it just would make more sense.
Is there a worst case scenario contingency that you're planning for in terms of 6, 12 months before it's usable?
Not at this time. We're optimistic, but not at this time.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we've got.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, give me a couple minutes and we'll head over to the NFL.
Because some meetings all constantly what I'm hearing you saying is that's not entirely correct.
No, this is just money that we need to do.
Right, but you don't know how much insurance is going to provide, sort of thing, and it probably will run beyond the one.